everyone, it's Kuramiki. ELDRAINE comes out in less than a month, and spoiler season hasn't technically started yet. But since it is Magic the Gathering, we of course have some leaks. Some of these I did find online, but I think some of these were already leaked too. But before we get into it, I just wanted to shout out Shiro and Sarah, both of my friends who are also super good content creators. Check out their links in the description. Also, our little Discord server link is in there if you do want to check that out too. And lastly, we are actually joined by Sarah herself. Would you like to say hi?
No, I would not like to say hi. Thank you very much.
Then, that's so unfortunate. Alright, but without further ado, let us get started. The first card, Archon of the Wild Rose. 2 white. Creature Archon. Flying. Other creatures you control other creatures you control that are enchanted by auras you control have base power and toughness 4/4 and have flying. It's also a 4/4. I want to say we will see what I'm talking about in a couple of cards, but there is a new enchantment subtype, and there's a handful of them as tokens, which are rolls. They are, how do you say, auras that you do control, or your opponents control if, your opponent plays them. But I think this is a really, really cool design that, essentially allows you to kind of turn your stuff into just big archons by just enchanting them. You have any thoughts, Seraph?
I like deer, and I like wings. I think the wings are cool.
I see. Would you become a deer with wings if you had the chance?
No. They're too tasty. I would end up eating myself.
No, don't eat yourself. But yeah, moving on to the next card. Expel the Interlopers. 3 white sorcery. Choose a number between 0 and 10. Destroy all creatures with power greater than or equal to the chosen number. So, initially, this is just a board wipe. You get to choose a number, and it's kind of good for your go wide and go small decks. But also, at the very worst, I think this is fine, because it's just a 5-mana Wrath of God. If you choose 0, it just straight up is a Wrath of God, but you paid an extra mana for it. I think it plays pretty nicely against larger board size decks. It's kind of like Citywide Boss from Guilds of Ravnica, but it costs 2 more mana, but with the incredible added flexibility.
Wait a minute. What if you just have a bunch of 1/1 tokens and then destroy everything with power greater than or equal to 2?
Yep, that's kind of how you're supposed to play with this from what I understand. Because, you just get to dictate how big your number is. But yeah, I think this is just a fine card. It's a board. They've printed a lot of board wipes recently, and this is just one of them. Cool. Next one, Moonshaker Cavalry. 5 white. Creature Spear Knight. It's a 6/6 flyer. When it enters the battlefield, creatures you control gain flying in +X, where X is the number of creatures you control. It's a massive flyer. It makes your board fly. It's an absolute W. It's kind of like the Craterhoof Behemoth in white, but unfortunately, unlike Hoof, it does not have haste, which is a bit annoying. But at least now there's a decent win con that will straight up end the game in mono white soldiers or devotion or spirits or knights. Finally, it's too big a board. At least now they can actually win too. All right, the next one, Spellbook Vendor. 1 and a white 2/2 vigilant creature, human peasant. At the beginning of combat on your turn, you may pay 1. When you do, create a sorcerer roll token attached to a creature you control. If you control another roll on it, put that one in the graveyard. Enchanted creature gets +1/+1, and whenever this creature attacks, scry 1. This is what I was talking about with the new enchantment subtype. So, rolls, from my understanding, are kind of like classes from D&D, except these the one creatures instead of the player itself. It's kind of awesome because, enchantments are awesome. But anyway, sorcerer roll by itself kind of looks decent. This is one of the beneficial rolls, I think. There's gonna be some negative rolls, but this card seems to be decently costed, and it's probably going to be annoying in Bomby and Limited. The fact that it is only just 1 mana to make the roll every turn, even though you can't stack rolls on the same creature, it seems to be quite powerful because you aren't spending a card on it. This also triggers all of your enchantment matter stuff. So, for instance, the first card, Archon. This, essentially, you're paying 1 to turn one of your creatures into a 4/4 flyer, and then the 1 also gives it a +1/+1, and then when it attacks, scry 1. So you straight up are paying 1 mana to kind of turn something into a 5/5 flyer that attacks and scries. And the fact that it happens every single turn is kind of cracked.
I think it would be kind of funny if you got your own self-insert as a card, and you were a creature of type human peasants.
Yeah, and if you look like that, that's also kind of funny.
I don't know, this man, woman, whatever, not the most glorious
But they
way
do
to be
sell.
immortalized.
They are selling spell books, you know? Think of all the knowledge, all the books.
Think of all the spells. Think of all the wizardry, the dark magic.
Alright, the next card. 3 Blind Mice. 2 to wait. 3 Blind Mice, Enchantment Saga. For the first chapter, make a 1/1 White Mouse creature token. I believe this is the second ever set to actually use the White Mouse creature token. The first one being the first ELDRAINE. Chapters 2 and 3, create a copy of target token you control. Chapter 4, creatures you control get +1/+1 vigilance until end of turn. So initially, it's a saga, it's an enchantment, I like it. It's kind of like most modal spells where each individual part is kind of garbage. The second and third chapter isn't quite the mechanic populate, since they do hit non-creature tokens. One of my friends, Rin, brought up that this is kind of... It gives the vibe of Fable of the Mirror Breaker, but I don't think it's that. Although I think this card is kinda dog water, it's probably fine and decent limited, but... At the very least, Mouse Tribal finally gets another piece. I believe, since there is a really neat token theme in this set, another card I saw, the Gruff triplets, I think. Now, if you play the Gruff triplets, and you play 3 Blind Mice, you pretty much win the game. We will see that when we get to the green section, though. Virtue of Loyalty. 3 white enchantment. At the beginning of your end step, put a 1/1 count on each creature you control, and you untap those creatures. But also the adventure side, Ardenvale Fealty? How do you say that? Fealty?
I believe it's... Wait. Fealty. I don't
fealty.
know. How am I I've never seen that word before.
I see. Well, Ardenvale Fealty is 1 to white instant adventure. Make a 2/2 night creature token with vigilance. I think this is a card you jam in every single white limited deck. It's a 5-mana enchantment that it's like Circle Loyalty, but it actually does something. At the very worst, 2-mana instant speed 2/2 night with vigilance is really nice. And on your end step, you give all of your creatures pseudo vigilance and you grow your board. Like this is an I wouldn't call it an insane card, but this thing will hurt a lot. Also, the art shows off what looks to be Rings of Brighthearth, but also that's not from the set, so I don't know what that is. Alright, Asinine Antics. We're in blue now. 2 blue sorcery. You can cast Asinine Antics as though it had flash if you pay 2 more to cast it. For each creature your opponent controls, create a cursed roll token attached to that creature. So here's an example of another roll. This one is a cursed roll, as opposed to sorcery roll we saw earlier. Cursed roll straight up just turns the enchanted creature into a 1/1. They just get cursed. Look at the art. Everyone's a donkey. I think it's like a blue borderlight. I think this is going to be quite good and limited, since you can flash out for 2 extra mana, and this mass triggers all of your enchantment into the battlefield effects. I think giving it flash is quite helpful, because imagine your opponent has a board of a bunch of great creatures that are slightly bigger than yours. You just attack with your board of mediocre creatures. Your opponent makes blocks, and then you just pay 2 extra mana, turn their entire board into 1/1s, and your board just eats theirs. Like, imagine that. Although that might just be like the Christmas Land outcome of this card, but I don't think so.
Me and my homies up to some Asinine antics. Up in the crib.
Yeah, turning the randoms into donkeys.
Yeah.
Alright, Horned Block Whale. 4 blue. Creature whale. 6/6. Flash. Ward 2. It enters the battlefield tapped unless it's your turn. And also Lagoon Breach, 1 in a blue, instant adventure. The owner of target attacking creature you don't control puts it on top of or bottom of their library. It's another whale for whale tribal. I don't know if that's an actual thing. I mean, big sea creatures do have decks. Honestly, Lagoon Beach is a decent removal spell in itself, and the 6 mana Flash Ward 2 is quite decent. It kind of reminds me of that one jag from AFR. This seems to be another one of those cards where you just put it in your deck if you're in blue, just because of Lagoon Beach. Like, I might rank bounce spells, or I guess semi-bounce / talk spells, a lot higher than I should. But the fact that this thing's also just a giant whale at the end of the game that just comes out at flash speed and also has Ward 2 is kind of crazy. Wait, Ingenious Prodigy, X and a blue. Creature Human Wizard 0/1. Skook. It can't be blocked by creatures with greater power. It enters with X/1/1 counters on it. And at the beginning of your upkeep, if Ingenious Prodigy has 1 or more 1/1 counters on it, you can remove 1 from it. If you do, draw a card. I frankly don't have much to say about this card. This seems just like a pretty generic design. There is a card that is, I want to say, red in an X, or it's black in an X, at rare, and I wonder if that's a cycle of cards in the set. But I think this is just a fine card. That can't be blocked by bigger things, and it kind of shrinks itself and gives you value. So I can't really ask that much of this card, but it still kind of seems a little unremarkable in my opinion.
Wait a minute, isn't this card like mega broken because it's 1 whole counter value per mana that you spend on it?
Unfortunately, yes, but also this is only on your upkeep, so you straight up just have to wait. It's an installment loan. You can only withdraw 1 card's worth of value every turn, assuming it has a counter and assuming your opponent just doesn't kill it. Alright, Sleep Cursed Fairy. Just blue. Creature Fairy Wizard 3/3. Flying Ward, I think that's Ward 2 or Ward 3. I can't tell because the image is deep fried. Sleep Cursed Fairy enters the battlefield tapped with 3 stun counters on it. And to remind what stun counters do, if it would become untapped, remove a stun counter from it instead. You can also pay 2 mana, well, 1 in a blue, to untap Sleep Cursed Fairy. This card is not playable in pretty much any constructed format. That being said, this is either a bomb unlimited or a trap. It's probably just okay. Landing it on turn 1 means that at the very earliest you can attack with it on turn 3. Given you pump 2 mana into it on turn 2 and turn 3, you'd finally be able to hit your opponent on turn 3 with a 3/3 flyer. This seems like an absolute trap. They haven't printed rares this bad in a while that look like potentially good rares. I could also just be wrong, because there's a chance that there's other counter play. That's such a weird phrase. That's a really weird way to phrase it. But if there's a way to make it end turn with no stun counters or remove stun counters, this becomes really good, because it is a 1 mana 3/3 flyer in blue. Unfortunately, we do know that on the extra enchantment sheet, Doubling Season is in the thing. So if your opponent somehow has a Doubling Season, you're not going to be able to attack with this thing for, like, at least 4 to 6 turns.
You know what they say about the Fae?
What did they say?
You always follow the advice from the Fae.
Well, this one's asleep.
Drink all of the shampoo in the house.
That, for legal reasons, is a joke. Please do not drink the shampoo in the house.
Drink all of the shampoo in the house.
Alright, we are in black. The Seats the Mirror. 1 black, Sorcery. This is our first card showing off the next mechanic, Bargain. You may sacrifice an artifact, enchantment, or... I think token? I think token, yeah, because I can't read. This card is so fried. You may sacrifice an artifact, enchantment, or token as you cast a spell. Search your library for a card, exile it face down, then shuffle. If this spell was Bargain, you can cast it without paying its mana cost if it was 4 or less. You put the exiled card into your hand if it wasn't cast this way. This card seems like it will see play. it's probably gonna go into that cringe deck of let's jam all the good black cards and 4 copies of the One Ring into the deck. This might get the One Ring banned, since it pretty much functions as 4 more copies of it. If you did Bargle the spell, you also straight up get to play the One Ring. Since you are still casting it, you get the protection cast trigger of it too. And the wildest part, as the little tiny cherry on top, you can't technically sack your own One Ring that's gotten too many counters to fetch another One Ring. And it allows you to basically reset it and give you some more protection, and not kill yourself from the card draw. This seems like an obnoxious card, and it's gonna be really... I think this is gonna be really well played in Arena.
What if this is the card that would get banned instead of the One Ring? Is that a possibility?
I think so, but typically, it's bad business to make a new set and then ban a card from that new set. The One Ring has already been out for a little bit, so... Lord of the Rings is also the second most best-selling set in all of Magic's history. So they've made a decent few dollars off of it already. Alright, are you ready for the next card? It's the end.
No. Oh.
Alright, 2 black, instant. It costs 2 less if your life is fiberless. Exile a creature or planeswalker. Search its controller's graveyard, hand, and library for any number of cards with that name. And exile them. Then they shuffle and they draw a card. Each card exiled from their hand that way. This seems kind of bad and limited. In Constructed, you have Stonebrain and you have Extirpate. Actually, wait, hold on. No, this isn't that bad. This hits permanents on board for 4 mana, maybe 2. And also exiles all copies in their deck and hand. That's actually quite good. I misread it. Because I thought this was just another Extirpate, where you just name a card, and you go find it in their deck, and you get rid of it. But actually, this is on-board removal. If your opponent has something atrocious, 4 mana exile, creature, or planeswalker is already, I think, pretty decently playable. The fact that you can also rip through their library in hand and just get rid of any other copies of that creature or planeswalker is really, really good and constructed. In Limited, it's a little bit less good. But 4 mana exile and maybe remove a card from their deck is pretty decent, I think. I do love this art though. Donatella and Giancola.
I do like the art.
Yeah, this art is insane.
I like how this card has such like a different feel from everything else. Like just the simplicity of its name, or like the abstract nature of its portrait. I feel like Magic was really going somewhere with this.
Yeah, so there's a number of artists that Magic has in their book that kind of don't really do the Magic style art. They have very distinct styles. Seth McKinnon is one of them, and another one is I'm blanking on their name, but they did a lot of splash art. Let me go find it, because a lot of the artists who have the ability to kind of just do their own style really, really, what's it called? Are really, really iconic and popular. And I think it's really good for the game because it gives it a really, really unique visual style to it. Anyway, but we don't want to get too off track because we have a lot of cards to go through. The end, and now Lord Skitter's Blessing. 2 and a black. Enchantment. When it enters the battlefield, make a Wicked Roll token attached to a creature you control. A Wicked Roll gives the enchanted creature +1/+1. When it's put into the graveyard, each opponent loses 1 life. At the beginning of your draw step, if you control an enchanted creature, you lose 1 and you draw an additional card. This seems like a pretty great card. It's a conditional Phyrexian Arena that's 1 black cheaper, and it also helps your board presence, given that you at least have a creature. From a flavor standpoint, I believe this is Lord Skitter giving the Pied Piper the rat flu. Alright, Rankle's Prank. Rankle's back. It's Rankle's Prankle. 2 black sorcery. Choose 1 or more. Each player discards 2. Each player loses 4. Each player sacrifices 2 creatures. It's kind of like Shieldress Edict, but double and also affects you. I'm pretty sure this is just what this is kind of what Rankle did in the original ELDRAINE. I don't have much to say about this other than it's kind of annoying. I don't see myself playing this card very often unless I have some sort of draw engine, or if I can afford to lose the 2 lights, or if I want my creatures to die. I just described what the card does now again, which is bruh. Right, Specter of Mortality. 3 black creature Specter. Flying. When Specter of Mortality enters the battlefield, you may exile 1 or more creature cards from your graveyard. When you do, each other creature gets -X and -X, where X number of cards exiled this way. It's also a 3/3. First off, Darken. The artist, I love his art so much. Like, look at the blues in this painting. It's so pretty. Also, Blood Rosewater in his teaser mentioned that one of the creature types from Alpha is getting their own archetype, and I believe it is Spectre Tribal. But that being said, in Limited and in Constructed, I think this is a pretty decent removal spell. Because it's a 5-mana 3/3 flyer, which is already kind of hype. But when it enters, you can exile as many creatures as you can from your graveyard to kind of wipe the board. Because exiling 3 creatures already just gives the rest of the board -3/-3, which takes out a good chunk of things.
But it's not exactly a board wipe, it's a board wipe, but you still get to have a 3/3 on the board.
Not just any 3/3, a 3/3 flyer.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think this is a good card. It is 5 mana though, but that doesn't mean anything. Spiteful Hexmage. Black mana for a human warlock 3/2. When it enters the battlefield, create a curse roll token attached to a creature you control. I think this card is probably just fine. If you need enchantment enter the battlefield effects, or if you can get value out of a roll, or if you can quickly give the curse roll another roll to remove it, it's a fine 3/2 for 1 mana with no abilities. I don't think this is a great card. This card doesn't do enough. Especially since the thing it does is potentially a negative. Because it's not a May ability, so you're forced to put it on a creature you control. If you control no other creatures, it just puts it on itself. And whatever creature it puts it on just becomes a 1/1. So, at the very worst, it's a 1 mana 1/1 with no other text. Right, Lord Scooter, Sewer King. 2 and a black, 3/3 legendary creature, Rat Noble. Whenever this or another rat enters the battlefield, exile up to 1 target card from an opponent's graveyard. At the beginning of combat on your turn, make a 1/1 black rat with this creature can't block. It's good. I like it. It reminds me of Bitter Blossom, but low-key worse in every way. It also does kind of eat up your opponent's yard, which might be relevant and limited based on how much graveyard interaction is in the set. Other than that, a 3-mana 3/3 kinda does a utility thing and makes you a 1/1 every turn. I think it's pretty good. The 1/1 doesn't have flying or death touch or some other ability, but it is still just give you a constant stream of bodies.
We love the pile of bodies.
Yeah. I don't know if we love the pile of rats, but... Speaking of pile of rats, Tangled Colony. 1 and a black creature rat 3/2. It can't block. When it dies, make X 1/1 rats that can't block or X the number of damage dealt to it. This card looks like a card straight from Eldritch Moon. Overall, can't block, but also explodes into a bunch of 1/1s. I think at the worst, or like most common outcome, is that you spent 2 mana for a 3/2 that trades with your opponent's 3/2, or 2/2, and you make 2 1/1s. Which isn't bad for 2 mana, I think, because you just spent 2 mana to kill their 2/2, and you made 2 1/1s. And that's the floor. If your opponent blocks with like a 5/5, this thing dies and you make 5 rats, and I'm really confused why your opponent would block with a 5/5. Alright, now we're in red, Charming Scoundrel. We are, according to my script, halfway through. That's a rip. Anyway, Charming Scoundrel 1 in a red, human rogue 1/1. It has haste. When Charming Scoundrel enters the battlefield, choose 1. Discard a card, draw a card. Create a treasure token, or create a Wicked Roll token attached to a target creature you control. Wicked Roll is the one that gives it +1/+1, and when it dies, each opponent loses 1. So at the very, very worst, this is a 2 mana 2/2 haste that when it dies, your opponent takes 1. Or it's a 2 mana 1/1 with haste that makes you a treasure. It's kind of like Charming Prince but red. I think it's probably fine. This feels like one of those higher skill ceiling cards in my opinion because of all the different modes and how you choose to use them. I could see myself misplaying this card at least 50 to 60% times I play it. Because of how... of the different things you could do with it. But the art is nice. She looks cute.
I would agree, it's a lot easier to misplay a card that you have more ways to play to begin with.
Alright, food fight. Wild red, enchantment. Artifacts you control have pay 2, sacrifice this artifact. It deals damage to any target equal to 1 plus number of permanents named food fight you control. Most of the time, in limited, that amount of damage is 2, because 1 plus 1 is 2. Your artifacts are 2 mana shocks. This could probably end the game. In Constructed, I think there's a really fun deck that Seth might brew. Seth from MTG Goldfish, where you play like something like an Academy Manufactor that just makes a bunch of artifacts. You play 4 copies of Food Fight. Because imagine if you can get like 2 to 4 copies of Food Fight on the board. If you have 4 copies of Food Fight on the board, you sack an artifact, it deals 5 damage to any target you want, including your opponent's face. That is a dense piece of bread. Or like a dense turkey.
MTG should release a set that's based on, like, American high school.
Interesting, why is that?
I think it would be kind of funny.
I see. But here's Imodane the Imodane the Pyro Hammer. I keep wanting to say Pyromancer, but Pyro Hammer is cooler. 2 red, legendary creature, human knight, 4/4. When an instant or sorcery spell you control that targets only a single creature deals damage to that creature, it deals that much damage to each opponent. This has so many words and I keep reading it and I still don't quite understand it. I know what it does objectively, and it kind of makes the creature burn spells like Torch the Tower, which we'll see I think at the end, quite a lot better. It straight up turns your Torch the Tower into Searing Blaze. Otherwise, it's a fine card. It's a 4 mana 4/4. But yeah, this card kind of seems made unless you're really building around it heavily. The realm needs a ruler, not a boy playing king. That's such a broad line. Just insulting the prince, faulting it like that. Alright, Raging Battle Mouse. 2 mana, 1 and a red, creature mouse, 2/1. The second spell you cast each turn costs 1 less. And I think this is probably the last mechanic in the set. Celebration. At the beginning of combat on your turn, if 2 or more non-land permanents enter the battlefield under your control this turn, target creature gets +1/+1 until end of turn. So keeping in mind for Celebration, it does count. It doesn't say non-token, so rolls do count towards Celebration. But that being said, I think they're bringing back the second spell tribal for one of the archetypes, which is most likely the Isn't archetype. Unfortunately, this card trades with X1s, which, you know, like a rat if you decide to block, which is kind of sad. Celebration, at least right now, mechanically to me, seems overwhelmingly mid. But it is a mouse that's going ham, so there is that going for it. Realm Scorcher Hellkite, 4 red, creature dragon 4/6. It has bargain, so you can sack an artifact, enchantment, or token, we cast it. Flying Haste. When it enters the battlefield, if you bargained it, add 4 mana in any colors. You can also pay 1 and a red to have it deal 1 damage to any target. I mean, it's a big dragon, has haste, has flying. I combined the two, it has faced. Sometimes refunds you part of your mana, and it's got some sort of fire-breathing adjacent ping ability. This kind of locks the game, in a sense, when it comes out, if you have the mana. Because imagine you just hit them for big, and then on your turn, you can just spend all of your mana deconstructing their entire board.
Yo, Kuro.
It reminds me... Yeah?
This is how you summon Tiamat.
I see. But this card reminds me of Archangel of Wrath from Dominar United, but less colors and no lifelink. But it does end the game. The art looks a little weird to me because I don't know. It looks like the tail is in a different perspective than the torso. But I just noticed it now and it's kind of throwing me off.
This card is created solely to help you summon Tiamat.
Yes. Alright. Rotisserie Elemental. This is one of the cards in Magic of all time. Wow. Okay. Just red for a 1/1 menace. That, I think, is pretty hype. When it enters, when it deals combat damage to a player, put a skewer counter on Rotisserie Elemental. Then you may sacrifice it. If you do, exile the top X cards where X number of skewer counters on it, and you can play it this turn. I think this is a fine card. It's a 1/1 menace that just will eventually one day maybe exile draw you a card or two. I think the biggest part is the fact that it's a skewer. It's got a skewer, and whatever this thing is on that skewer looks like it's having a horrible day. It looks like it's got a face. What is that? But yeah. Alright, Song of Totentance. X and a red. This is the X-Fall I was talking about earlier. Sorcery. Create X 1/1 black rat creature tokens with this creature can't block. Creatures you control gain haste until end of turn. According to Rin, who speaks German, this means Song of the Death Dance. I think it's a adjacent card to Fireball, but instead of dealing X damage to any target, it gives you a board that can't block. They do have haste though. It's kind of like Shivan Devastator, but it doesn't fly, block, and is actually a bunch of rats. So it's not very like Shivan Devastator in a lot of ways, but yeah, this thing potentially just goes around your opponent. Because you may, send in 6 or 7 mana, you make 6 or 7 1/1s, you attack with them. Your opponent blocks a couple, the ones that lived, you just attack with them again next turn. It's so many rats. Look at that. All of the rats.
I'm a rat enjoyer. I like rats. Do you like rats?
I am indifferent towards them. Oh, another mythic. We're in green now, so we are slowly but surely getting to the end. Blossoming Tortoise, 2 green, creature, turtle, 3/3. When it enters the battlefield or attacks, it's got the Titan text. Mill 3 cards, then return a land from your return a land from your graveyard to the battlefield tapped. Activated creatures of land you control cost 1 less. Land creatures you control get +1/+1. This is a build around card if I've seen one. It is also a 4 mana 3/3 that kind of ramps you, but the man lands that turn into creatures in the set are rare. So this card, unfortunately, if you open this as a mythic, is a little bit underwhelming. The art is incredibly pretty though, just the amount of runes and stuff. From Simon Dominic. Very cool art, man. Super cool.
Keep drawing turtles. Maybe we'll make it to Kima one day.
Bramble Familiar, 1 and a green, 2/2. Creature, Elemental Raccoon. Tap, add a green. 1 and a green, tap. Discard a card, return it to its owner's hand. Well, you can also play Fetch Quest. 5 green, Sorcery Adventure. Mill 7, then put a creature, enchantment, or land from those cards onto the battle. So the fact that this thing comes down on turn 2 and ramps you as much as you need, it kind of protects itself too by bouncing itself to your hand, is quite nice. But at the end of the game, you can straight up just Fetch Quest and just mill 7 and grab the best thing you just milled. This card seems pretty good, and also look at its face. It's so adorable, this Elemental Raccoon. Look at this guy.
Yeah. I'd almost hesitate to eat that dude.
I mean, it's also by Simon Dominic, so Simon doesn't only draw turtles. They also draw really, really cute raccoons made of thorns. Don't eat the thorns, that's a bad idea.
Oh.
Alright, Feral Encounter, green, sorcery. Look at the top 5 cards of your library. You can exile the creature card from among them. Put the rest on the bottom in a random order. You can cast that exiled card this turn. At the beginning of the next combat phase this turn, target creature you control deals damage equal to its power to a creature you don't control. Feral Encounter. It does a lot for 2 mana. It digs and gets you a creature that you have to play this turn though, but it's also a bite spell, so you put onto it. overall, I think it's a pretty good card. It just has a lot of words, and it's a couple disjointed abilities. But also you get artwork of Little Red Riding Hood literally shooting a crossbow bolt through the big bad wolf. You can see like that bolt exiting the body, and there's just like this splatter of blood over here. That's kind of sick.
I'm sorry, but that crossbow bolt is not stopping that wolf.
Yeah.
Red Riding Hood is screwed. She's absolutely destroyed in this case.
Alright, Gruff triplets, 3, green, green, green. Satyr Warrior, 3/3, trample. When it enters the battlefield, if it's not a token, make 2 tokens that are copies of it. When Gruff triplets dies, put a number of 1/1 counters equal to his power on each creature you control named Gruff triplets. This is insane. It is 6 mana, and it gives you 3 3/3s with trample, which is 9 power. And when one of them dies, the 2 3/3s that remain become 6 6s with trample. And when one of the 6 6s die, the last guy becomes a 12/12 with trample. Imagine if you have some sort of token doubler or like token copier, kind of like the 3 blind mice from very early on in the video. You just make a copy of this, and when it dies, you put that many counters on all of the creatures that are Gruff triplets. This could potentially get out of hand super quickly, because if you make a 4th Gruff, and it dies, the older 3 become 6 6s. This card becomes absolutely insane, and it gets better with rolls and auras and equipment. Because remember, some of the rolls and stuff give it more power. So when it dies, you just put even more counters on the others. This card is insane. Alright, a Huntsman's Redemption. 2 and a green, make a 3/3 beast. You may sack a creature. If you do, search your library for a creature or basic land card, put in a hand, and up to 2 creatures get +2/+2 trample. I mean, it's a 3 mana 3/3 beast at the worst, and then maybe it fetches you a creature too. This is, like I mentioned, a bunch of abilities that are all kind of mid. The nice thing is, the first ability is on rate, but kind of sad. A 3 mana 3/3 is not quite playable, but it's not that unplayable either. The issue is, without a board, if your opponent kills the 3/3 and you're in a bad position, the rest of the card doesn't do anything. Which is not great. Alright, Sentinel of Lost Lore. 1 green creature, Elf Knight, 3/4. When it enters the battlefield, choose 1 or more. Return target card you own from Exile that has Adventure to your hand. Put a card you don't own in Exile that has Adventure on the bottom of its owner's library. Or exile someone's graveyard. This looks good. The fact that it says 1 or more means value. It's good. I don't know how to break it yet, but it's good. I mean, at the very worst, it's a 3/4 for 3. I'm not great at judging cards, and I think this is just a fine card. It's good. I'm sure you can break it somehow. Thunderous Debut. I mean, this video is my Thunderous Debut, I guess. 6 green, sorcery. It has bargain. Look at the top 20 cards of your library. You can review up to 2 creature cards from among them. If you bargain, put those cards onto the battlefield. Otherwise, you put them in your hand. This card, it's just tooth and nail at home. It's tooth and nail for standard and tooth and nail for pioneer. I think it's horrible, and I don't have anything else to say about this card.
Is the man supposed to be fighting the snake, or is he like fighting with the snake?
I think the flavorfully, they both showed up, so they're on the same side.
I see.
Because he's very much looking towards the audience. Alright, Apprentice Folly. 2 blue-red. For chapters 1 and 2, choose a non-token creature you control. This one can't copy the goat triplets. Choose non-token creature you control that doesn't have the same name as a token you control. Make a token that's a copy of it, except it's not legendary and is a reflection and it has haste. And you sack all reflections you control. It goes insane with the Goth Brothers if it worked. Otherwise, it's kind of cool. It needs some sort of leave the battlefield ability for the stuff you're copying. But it does copy legendaries. This seems like another high complexity card that I'm not entirely sure how to break yet. Likeness Looter. black, blue. Creature, fairy, shapeshifter, 1/1. It has flying. You can tap it to draw a card and discard a card because it is a looter. You can pay X and it becomes a copy of a creature in your graveyard with mana value X. But it has flying and this ability. Activate only as a sorcery. Interestingly, when you pay X, it's not until end of turn. So this thing just permanently becomes a creature in your graveyard, and you can just always change it. So it's like a shapeshifter ninja fairy looking thing, and the art is absolutely sick. I think this is going to be annoying to deal with in Limited because it is a 1/1 flyer, and when you pay X, it becomes a card in your graveyard, but it still has flying. So imagine if you just, whatever the biggest creature in your yard that's aggressively costed. Oh, you could target. I think the combo would be to try to put the really, really bad 1-drop in black that enters with a counter. Put that in your graveyard and then have this copy it. Because since you're copying that creature, it doesn't enter in, so you don't have to put the cursed aura on your own creature. And it's now a 3/2 flyer for 1 mana. We're building our own sleek fairy, but not bad. Alright, ROWAN, Sign of War. This is one of the mythics. 1 black-red, legendary creature, human, wizard, 4/2, menace. Those are some stats. Tap, spells you cast this turn that are black and or red cost X less to cast, where X is the number of life you lost this turn. Activate only as a sorcery. That's really, really weird. I am not entirely sure how you're supposed to break this card, because you can't do this on your opponent's turn. And you can't quite, unless you're just bolting yourself. I'm not entirely sure.
I think that's the intended usage. You just bolt yourself.
Yeah, because if you bolt yourself, then all of your spells cost just 3 less.
Yeah.
This turn. I don't know, this card still seems kind of bad, but a 3 mana 4/2 with menace is kind of chunky. It's a tank. Alright, Will, Sign of Peace, 1 white blue, 2/4, vigilance. I like how it's a mirror of ROWAN. You can tap. Spells you cast this turn that are white and or blue cost X less to cast, where X is the amount of life you gained this turn. Activate a sorcery. I think this one is infinitely more useful than the other one. And I don't know. I really like it, partially because I play white-blue like a cringe person. Your girls cringe like that. But also the flavor text is so nice, and look at Will, he's low-key kinda hot in this picture. It's easy to cry for glory and charge those who disagree with you. But it takes finesse to turn enemies into allies rather than corpses. I agree with that sentiment.
According to the color stereotypes chart, you are totally not playing stacks.
Well, my Enchantress deck is kind of control stacksy. It makes it so that they can't deal damage to me and they can't resolve a creature. But anyway, Yenna, Red Tooth Regent. 2 green white, 4/4, legendary creature, elf noble. 2, tap. Choose an enchantment you control that doesn't have the same name as another permanent you control. Oh my god, this is insane. Create a token that's a copy of it, except it's not legendary. If it's an aura, untap it, then scry 2. Activate only as a sorcery. So this thing just straight up copies your auras, and you can just keep chaining it together. Well, except you can't copy the same thing more than once, because that's the first line. This card seems pretty good in Enchantress, considering you can just straight up pay to tap it and just double one of your enchantments. I think it's good. Alright, biluna Grand Squall. Green, blue, red. Creature, legendary creature, giant, noble, 4/4. Has trample. Permanent spells you cast that have an adventure cost 1 less to cast. Seek Furrows, 2 green, blue, red. Instant adventure. Mill 7, then you put all cards that have an adventure into the mill cards in your hand. It looks like from this card, adventures will primarily be in Teamer. Seek Thrills could draw you a good amount, but you probably need to hit 3 to 4 cards off it before it becomes worth it. However, the back end is kind of nice. It's a fun build around overall, I think. The art is kind of weird though. I like it. Decadent Dragon. 2 red, 4/4 creature dragon. Flying trample. It has flample. That's already insane. When it attacks, make a treasure token. And there's also expensive taste. 2 to black. Instant adventure. Exile the top 2 cards of target opponent's library face down. You can look and play those cards for as long as they remain exiled. So, I mean, a 4 mana 4/4 Slampler that makes treasure. The main body is amazing. I love it so much. Also, the art is just like this crusty dragon. The adventure though, it's okay, I think. The key part about it is that it doesn't allow you to use your mana as though it were any color, but it does allow you to play the lands if you exile that. But since it does eventually give you treasure, you should be able to cast those cards eventually. It's also a card from the awesome artist Wiley Becker. I can't wait to see if she auctions this thing off on Facebook. I don't have the money, but if any of you guys watching want to lend, if any of you guys want to, you know, buy me a painting of Decadent Dragon, the original, assuming it is like an oil painting, which it kind of looks like it, I would totally be very happy. Alright, Devouring Sugar Maw, 2 black, 6/6 creature horror. Menace Trample. At the beginning of your upkeep, you may sack an artifact, enchantment, or token if you don't tap Sugar Maw. Half for dinner, 1 and a white, instant adventure. Make a 1/1 human creature and a 1 and a food. 4 mana, 6/6 Menace Trample. That is some disgusting stats. It does tap itself if you can't keep feeding it, so it is somewhat balanced. But keep in mind, with the amount of rules and enchantments in here, each creature with a roll on it is 2 turns. So like if you have a 1/1 human with a, let's say, blessed roll on it, you can sack the blessed roll, and then next turn you can sack the human. So like, there's a lot of ways to keep the Sugar Maw untapped. But also, it's just a giant donut with worms coming out of it.
Someone was on something when they came up with this. I'm not sure what, but they were on something.
Yeah, that's kind of wild. Elusive Otter. Oh my god, that's so adorable! Look at that thing! It's just blue for a 1/1 creature otter. It has prowess. When you cast non-creature, it gets +1/+1. And creatures with less power than it can't block it. You also have Grove's Bounty, X and a green. Distribute X 1/1 counters among any number of creatures you control. That's just better Thrive. Thrive is the same, but you can't put more than 1 counter on a creature you control. I think this is a pretty decent spell. Having an X spell that you can use in the late game, and you also have a 1/1 prowess that potentially gets bigger and smaller things can't chump it, that seems like a pretty decent card. And it's still adorable, look at it! It's so cute! Alright, Heartflame Duelist. 1 and a white, 3/1 human knight. Instant and sorcery spells you control have a lifelink. Heartfire Slash, 2 and a red, instant adventure, it deals 3 to any target. Bolt in standard is always decent, even if it's overcosted. The closest comparison I would make is Bone Crusher Giant, though Stomp seems to be pretty much a side grade. That's more often than not better, due to how aggressively costed it is. Though some of that is me speaking from the Enchanter standpoint, where damage prevention from Stomp usually kills me. They also finally brought back the lifelink for spells, which is cool tech. Now Boros Aggro/Burn has another decent piece. I think this will see play in some Boros Burn decks, mostly because it does end up gaining a decent amount of life. Imagine Boros Burn, but every lightning bolt is actually a lightning helix. But another comparison to this card would kind of be like Soulfire Grandmaster, which from my understanding, almost never saw play, but I wasn't playing at the time, so I have no idea.
Whenever I look at this card, I hear Toho Bass music.
Yeah, I feel that. Alright, and then now we have Mosswood Dread Knight. 1 and a green, 3/2 human knight trample. When it dies, you can cast it as an adventure until your next turn. Until the end of your next turn. Then you have Dread Whispers, 1 and a black sorcery adventure. You draw a card, lose a life. I talked about this in the YouTube short the other day. This seems to be insane. It's like a Phyrexian Rager, but it's a 3/2 with trample, and you can play it pretty much every turn or every other turn. This card's a house. I don't really have to say much more about it. I hope I can do a draft one day where I open like 3 of these, because that would be disgusting. Questing Druid. 1 and a green, 1/1 creature human druid. Whenever you cast a spell that's white, blue, black, or red, put a counter on it. Then you have Seek the Beast. 1 and a red instant adventure. Exile the top 2 cards of your library. Until your next end step, you may play those cards. The second half is Better Ren's Resolve, which came out literally a few months ago, and the back half is literally just Quarian Dryad. Overall, 2 decent cards stapled together makes another decent card. In fact, it makes a good card because both decent cards cost the same as this. Scalding Viper, 1 and a red, Elemental Snake 2/1. The foiling on this is actually super pretty. Whenever an opponent casts a spell with mana value 3 or less, it deals 1 damage to that player. And you also got Steam Clean, 1 and a blue, Sorcery Adventure. Bounce a non-land permanent to its owner's hand. I love that we've seen 2 different blue adventures that both bounce a thing. I think you'd pretty much play this more often than not, whenever you can. A 2-mana 2x that punishes your opponent for playing small is also a nice bonus in my opinion. Well, also, last I checked, you don't want fire or water inside of a library, but I could be wrong. Twinning Twins, 2 blue. Creature, fairy, wizard, 4/4. Flying Vigilance, Ward 1. That's all. I love keyword soup flyers. Swift Spiral, 1 and a white instant adventure. Exile a non-token creature. Return it under its owner's control at the next end step. So it protects itself, and it's also a whole bunch of words. I think this is good. I like this card. 4/4 Flying Vigilance is pretty nice. It's a good blocker, and you can also deal some decent damage. On Agatha's Soul Cauldron, 2 mana for Legendary Artifact. You may spend mana as though it were mana of any color to activate abilities of creatures you control. Creatures you control with +1/+1 counters on them have all activated abilities of all creatures exiled with Agatha's Soul Cauldron. What in the what? Tap, exile a card from a graveyard. When a creature is exiled this way, put a counter on a creature you control. So I think this is implying that Agatha is cooking dead bodies and giving them to other people, and those people get powers of the dead people. That's weird. This card is weird. I don't know how I feel about it. It's really weird. I think it's good. I think it's bad. I don't know. But yeah, soup. Anyway, Hilda's Crown of Winter, 3 mana, Legendary Artifact. Pay 1 tap target creature. This ability costs 1 less to activate during your turn. Pay 3, sack it, draw a card for each tap creature your opponent's control. A 3 mana tapper is a bit much, but it is a tapper nonetheless, that you can also cash out. I would probably personally value this card too high because I love 0 and 1 mana tap abilities. Tapping your opponent's creatures is something I enjoy doing probably too much, which is bad, if it's kind of rude. Alright, so we are nearing the end, I think. Restless Biovac. They said there's a cycle of 5 enemy-colored dual lands that become creatures. Enters tap to add white or red. 1 red-white, it becomes a 2/2 red and white ox until end of turn. When it attacks, put a counter on a creature you control. The art on this is stunning, even though it's a little bit blurry, I think. The creature part seems to be pretty alright too, especially since at worst it attacks as a 3/3 that gets bigger every turn. But you're able to put the counter it makes on a better target if you need. Yeah, so I think it's pretty decent. Restless Fortress. This is the art of the card that they showed off on the stream. And then just tapped, you can tap to add white or black. You can pay 2 white black, it becomes a 1/4 black nightmare creature until end of turn. And when it attacks, defending player loses 2 and you gain 2. I think this is good. It's a 1/4 that's a little crusty to attack with, but it is a 4-point life swing even if they block. Because by attacking, they just lose 2 and you gain 2. So you're already getting that 4-point life swing, and if this lives until the next turn and can go in for a couple more hits, this is more than if paid for itself. Restless Fire. Enters tapped, white or red. You can just pay, blue or red. You can pay blue and red. Until after turn, it becomes a 2/1 blue and red elemental with, as long as it's your turn, this creature's first strike. It's still a land though. Whenever it attacks, scry 1. In my opinion, this seems pretty weak. A 2/1 first strike is fine because it trades with a decent amount of things, so this isn't bad on the defensive. But the scry is kind of mid because it's wanting to attack, and the second your opponent has like the 1/3, this becomes pretty bad. And the fact that it's also not that big, while the others are like 2/2s that get bigger every turn, and like a 1/4 that just instantly loses your opponent life. It's just kind of mid. Restless Beanstalk. Same line as all the others, taps for green or blue. You can pay 3 green blue. Until on turn, it becomes a 5/5 green and blue plant with trample. So that's a great keyword to have on a 5/5 bite. When it attacks, another creature gets base power and toughness 3/3. So keep in mind, base power and toughness becoming a 3/3 is really good in a set where there's just auras at common and auras at token rarity. So whatever you turn into a 3/3 will carry its auras really, really well. It's got trample, and it literally on attack turns something into an elk, kind of. I mean, a 5/5 trampler is really nice, just at the very least. Right, and these are, I believe, the promo pack cards, so there are a couple uncommons and I think a common. And that's like almost the end. We're so close to the end. Wow, my voice hurts. Stroke of Midnight, 2 and a white, instant. Destroy target non-land permanent, its control makes a 1/1 human. This is a good card. Insane, even. Probably not insane, though. It's pretty much strictly better Generous Gift, and by extension, Beast Within. The key part is that it doesn't hit lands, for the few times that actually is relevant. Like in, Commander High Value Land Piles? Or like Historic Exalted book combo? Overall, this is a great addition into the white toolkit of almost auto-includes in Commander. Alright, Sleight of Hand. Blue for a sorcery. Look at the top 2 cards of your library. Put one of them in your hand and the other on the bottom. I mean, it's a 1-mana cantrip. It's like Opt, it's like Consider, it's just another one of these cards. I don't play Spellsinger very often, and I think this is probably fine. The fact that it's not an instant kind of hurts. Fairy Dream Thief. Black for a 1/1 Fairy Warlock Flyer. When it enters battlefield, surveil 1. You can pay 2 and a black, exile it from a graveyard, you draw a card and you lose a life. This is a card I would probably pick very highly. 1/1 for a 1. 1/1 Flyers for 1 is my favorite gender. It's having surveil on ETB is nice value, and having some way of getting a card value back from the graveyard is also pretty decent. Overall, that's not much else I can say about it. It has nice art. The art almost looks like a Homestuck troll because you can see the orange horns. That's kind of weird.
I love Homestuck.
Yeah. Torch the Tower, red. Instant, bargain. Deals 2 damage to target creature planeswalker. If it was bargain, deal 3 to that permanent and you scry 1. If permanent dealt damage by Torch the Tower would die, exile it instead. It's another shock, Searing Blaze, Strangle, Side Grade. Burn might like it, Ratchos might sack it. I don't play either of those archetypes, but it's great and limited because it's creature removal. And like I mentioned, that kind of mid-4 meta rare 2/4/4 creature, this just, with that out, this becomes deal 2 to a creature, deal 2 to their face for 1 mana, which is pretty good. Alright, Tangle Span Lookout. Our last card for today. 2 to green, 2/2. Creature Cedar. When an aura enters the battlefield under your control, draw a card. I talked about this in another YouTube short a couple days ago as well. It's a decent card in limited as a build around. It's an auto-include in almost every aura-based Enchantress deck and Commander. And it's an uncommon, so it's gonna be budget. Not much else can be said about it. I love it. Like I mentioned before, rolls are enchantments, from my understanding. So this will trigger... Whenever a roll enters under your control, you draw a card. So, like, playing that blue card that makes your entire opponent's board into 1/1s, that card will draw you, like, at worst, 1 card, which is sad, but, like, think about the value if your opponent has a bunch of cards, or, sorry, a bunch of creatures, just play it, and then you draw, like, 18 cards or something. Yeah, it's kind of cringe. Alright, but, wow, that was a long video. Thanks for listening through it. If you didn't, and you just went through it and grabbed a screenshot of all the cards, that's frankly also fair. Like I mentioned before, check out Seraph and Shiro. You should also drop a comment, like, you know, do all the cringe stuff.
Hello.
Subscribe.
I don't do MTG, but I schizo post.
Yeah, Seraph programs, and she's cool, and plays Minecraft, and she's cool, and she's cute, and she's cool.
I'm going to piss on your carpet.
No, don't do that. Also, our Discord server link is in the description, like I mentioned before. I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye!